Hello and welcome to another episode of PPC Town Hall. My name is Fred Valles. I'm your host. I'm also CEO and co-founder at Optimizer, a PPC management software. For today's episode, we're going to look at 2025 and it being a new year. What are some of the things that PPC practitioners are going to stop doing, start doing, and doubling down on? So let's talk about strategies that we think have run their course, the new strategies that we're excited that are going to drive results in the year going forward. And to talk about all of this, we've got two great PPC experts who are going to share with us what they think in terms of starting, stopping, and doubling down. So with that, let's get rolling with this episode of PPC Town Hall. All right, and I have two great guests today, Andrew Lolk and Julie Bacchini Friedman. Welcome back to the show. You've been on the show multiple times. It's great to see you again. Julie, let's go to you first. Tell us how you've been and what's new with you.
Oh, thank you for having me. I always love coming on here and sharing my thoughts about what's going on in the world of PPC. Things are good. I think 2025 is going to be, I'm going to say interesting year. That's going to be my kind of is like a catch-all for all the things that may or may not happen in this year. So lots to look forward to and pay attention to.
Great. And Andrew, welcome back as well. What's new with you?
I think the biggest thing is I feel like I had a New Year's resolution to fight less on LinkedIn, and I decided to pick a fight with everybody in the first 2 weeks of being back from vacation. So that's just interesting. So that's good. Nothing changes. So I believe everything will be the same in 2025. We'll all fight about the same things. So it'll be interesting.
We will, but when it comes to PPC, I think maybe there are a few things that we can all agree on we might have to stop doing. So the format that we're going to go with today for the listeners, we're going to talk about what people will stop doing, start doing, and what we're going to double down on. So let's go with that first category. Is there anything you think we should no longer be doing in PPC?
I'll let Julie go first.
Oh, you let me go first? Okay. I mean, I feel like there's some obvious things. Certainly if you're still doing, and I can't believe that I'm going to say this in the year 2025, but somebody just messaged me about this like last week. So I'm going to go ahead and say it. The single keyword ad group, its time has come and gone, people.
I thought we were going to go there. No more SKAGs?
No, I mean, listen, let me preface everything I'm going to say today with, you may have something that's working fabulously for you, and I am not going to suggest that you blow something up that's working for you right now. I mean, I think that's an important sort of disclaimer that we talk about here. Sometimes you have a legacy thing that is working in a particular account. You don't have to blow it up. You need to be ready if it stops performing in the way that it has for you with like, what are you going to do next? But I would say, if we're planning on what we're doing in our current accounts and any accounts we might be taking on in 2025, SKAGs would be at the top of my list of things that need to just not happen anymore.
Okay, so that's one. And so that makes sense then. For new accounts, you probably wouldn't introduce the SKAG, but for existing accounts where it's working, you might phase it out over time. Now, that's really talking about account structure, right? Single keyword ad groups. Is there something that might replace that? And are we talking here about SKAGs and single themed ad groups, or what's kind of the replacement in your opinion?
So I feel like the platforms are trying to get us to be broader and broader and broader and broader in everything that we're doing. I prefer to try to, even if it's just for my own thought processes and managing things, sometimes for budget allocations, I'm a fan of the STAG, the single theme, trying to sort of keep things a little bit separated out so you have more flexibility in the language that you're using in your ad copy. You could be sending to different landing pages depending on how sophisticated you are on that side of things. So for me, the way that I like to manage things is to definitely keep things themed so that you don't have everything just, crushed together in one giant campaign.
That makes sense. Andrew, any thoughts on structure, or what's one of your top things you will stop doing?
So I'll just echo. I agree on the single keyword ad groups. I also just in general, I think one thing to just piggyback off there is one of the big things for us is negative keywords. The more you work with smart bidding, and again, has to do with certain big parts of the market. Again, if you're selling sex toys, if you're selling posters, if you're selling certain things, then you need to still utilize a heavy negative keyword list. But we just see in like 80-90% of cases, actually deleting all negative keywords when we take over accounts from other agencies or in-house just blows everything out the water. We have a case where if you open up the slides I sent you, we have one case where we actually were able to take and remove all negative keywords. And what we saw was, yes, we saw an increase in CPC. That's fine, but we also saw a 6x or 5.5x increase in revenue simply by doing that. This was an account where the previous agents had overly focused on negative keywords and tried to do like this control where every single keyword they had added as a normal keyword in the account got added as a negative in the dynamic search ads campaign. So simply just really trying to sculpt the account. And they had also done it between campaigns in search, which for me, all of this excessive control to try to say this actual search term have to show in this particular ad group because we have single keyword ad groups. That kind of control is just mute these days. You can't control it. Phrase match and close variant matching is just killing any attempt to do it. And as you try to do it, you're much more likely to make a mistake and exclude things too broadly. So I'd say like no more single keyword ad groups. Yes, if you're selling mattresses, you're gonna have the keyword mattress in one ad group so you can follow it along. Great, but as an overall account strategy, doesn't work anymore. And an overly use of negative keywords to try to control things that smart bidding should actually have under control. It's just something to put thoughts into.
Right, and that's interesting because I think the matching mechanism that Google employs has become more sophisticated, obviously, as machine learning and artificial intelligence has gotten better. So kind of doing a reset there on negative keywords makes a lot of sense. But I think we're certainly not saying don't use negative keywords. It's more like, let's do a reset. Let's see what Google is actually matching us to, where maybe it still doesn't make sense. And that's what should be excluded as a negative. But many of those other situations where maybe something had to be a negative because we were spending too much money on it, because bid automation wasn't quite as sophisticated, that's where we were producing losses. But now that bidding is better, maybe it's okay for some of these negatives to still trigger ads.
Yeah, because the way to look at it is like a negative is a black and white. It's an off and on a situation where smart bidding should have the opportunity to increase and decrease bids for a search term or product, or the search term with negative keywords based on, again, device, audiences, targeting, and also like it comes into seasonality too. If we're selling swimwear, then maybe like swim trunks with legs inside, or like a long tail keyword that doesn't do anything in September is going to be amazing in May and June. And as we just see people just overusing negative keywords. And the examples here is really like, if you have a lot of data in your account, if you're working in e-commerce or within a broad spectrum of lead gen, then negative keywords is mostly in all accounts overused. Again, if you're a lawyer within a very particular niche, you have to use negative keywords like crazy. But 80% of accounts we see today are just way overutilizing negatives.
Yeah, so the tip there is use negative keywords to make those black and white decisions where it's absolutely clear that something has absolutely no chance of being relevant to you. But don't use it if we're talking about managing bids on a spectrum where something could be relevant seasonally, or like I've always said, there's no such thing as a bad keyword. There's only such a thing as a bad bid, right? Now, sometimes you can't bid low enough to make it still worthwhile. And in that case, you do use those negatives. But that's sort of the idea here. Julie, what's your take on negative keywords?
I agree that you don't want to overuse them. You don't want to. I think one of the things that we're going to have to do here in 2025 is find that sweet spot, that balance for each account that we work on between not letting the machine learning and the smart bidding sort of go off on tangents that we don't really want them to go on, that we know is a tangent and is just going to waste money, right? So I think it's finding that balance between trying to stop that from happening without completely cutting off any opportunity that the system might be able to find for you. And I think it's a bit of a balancing act between, especially for budget conscious advertisers too, right? If you have a lot of budget and you have a lot of runway to let the algorithms do their thing, you have a lot more play, I think, in what you can do on the negative keyword front. If you're more budget limited, if your conversions take longer, you might have to be a little tighter in your strategy with like what you're eliminating and what you're choosing to experiment with. So I think it's a little bit dependent on sort of what the parameters are around your account, around your spend, around your volume.
Yeah, and one thing I heard you say there had to do with almost attribution models. You didn't say it directly, but basically where the value is coming from. So are there any attribution models that we think are sort of toast by now and should no longer ever be used? Andrew, I'll start with you on that one.
Ooh, I haven't talked about distribution models in a long time. I just don't believe in it generally. Like none of them. I don't believe in any of it anymore. I don't last click is absolutely dead. It should never be it for anybody outside of the baby stage of an account should never be touched. But even then, Google will, in their own DDA or first and last, it will still credit 50% of the attribution to the brand term. So that just shows me it's the weighting is completely wrong no matter how you look at it. It's so I don't trust any of it, but last click is 100% wrong. First click doesn't work either. So the closest thing we've gotten now is that DDA model that just, it is what it is. We can't do much about it anymore. So it's just, within a Google Ads account, it's actually not a conversation we have anymore, but we definitely don't touch last click.
Julie, where do you stand on attribution models?
I mean, if we're being honest, attribution has always been a little bit of fairy dust and wishes as opposed to really hard data, right? And it's even more so now. I think with less data being available, with privacy and consent mode and all of these different things that are happening, there's less data available for the platforms to work with, right? And so getting more comfortable with the fact that things are modeled, that's something that we're all going to have to really wrap our heads around, I think, heading into if you haven't already, heading into 2025, because even though attribution, you could argue, was never that precise or great, we as an industry talked about it that way. We sold it that way, right? That we have this really strong attribution. This is why you should do digital versus doing other types of advertising. And I think that's coming unwound a bit here as we move from 2024 into 2025. So I think that talking about the attribution as a weighting factor or a contributing factor versus some kind of absolute piece of data, I think is also something we're going to change the way that we talk about these things with our clients, with our stakeholders, just because of the nature of how it works now.
And that's a really interesting point, because I think there's two dimensions to this. One of them is, what do we report to stakeholders and clients? And you're right, it's fairy dust, right? So in that attribution model, is that really the amount of revenue that we produced? Well, no, that's just how we attributed. And there's going to be double counting, there's going to be undercounting. And that's from the reporting perspective. So there you have to be really careful. But then the other dimension of it is that these attribution models, they are using the machine learning systems that also do the bidding. So if you're going to trust your bidding to these systems, it probably makes sense to have a very similarly run system that assigns value and helps decide where the bids should be. So pick the fairy dust that moves you directionally into where you want to go, yes. And then tie those two together, right? So yes. Yes. Good. So let's go on to the next one. Is there anything else we're going to stop doing in 2025?
So one thing that we see, that I've seen a lot through 24, 23, I still see people jump on a lot, is I'll take it twofold. I'll say feed only performance max campaigns. I've been the biggest spokesperson to, if you want to run PMax, you should do feed only, because delving into display and video at the same time as search and shopping is a horrible idea. I still stand by that. It's just today I don't see a reason why you would run a feed-only Performance Max campaign over a standard shopping campaign. So I don't see the need to do that anymore. And alongside that, the splitting up, if you are running PMax and you are running PMax feed only, which means you're only focusing on the shopping ad component of PMax, for goodness sake, stop splitting up your campaigns. There is no data sharing between the two. The conversions are not shared. You cannot do shared budgets. You cannot consolidate the data in a bidding strategy. Every single time you split up a PMax campaign, that individual PMax campaign needs to hit a certain volume of conversions for it to be effective. And again, that is 30 conversions a month. Yeah, that's where it enables target ROAS or something like that. That doesn't mean it's effective at 30 conversions a month. It needs 300 to be somewhat effective. It needs 3,000 to be excellent at what it does. And I'm exaggerating a little bit here, but the whole idea with splitting up your products into and categories into several PMax campaigns is just, it's a horrible idea. It never works. And consolidation is such an important factor for PMax these days, and it's just the algorithms that you're just shooting yourself in the foot. So if anybody's doing that, I know Julie said you shouldn't blow your accounts up, but that's the one thing I would say, for goodness sake, blow your accounts up if you're doing that today. If you're not having different ROAS targets per category, then there's no need to have a different campaign. That's basically
okay, so you just said if you do have different ROAS targets, then maybe you should have different PMax campaigns, but then you're still making the point that you're splitting your data and just making it harder for the system to reach its goals.
If you're selling shoes and you're selling jeans, and your jeans can run at 500% and your shoes can run at 300% target ROAS, be my guest. Split it up. That's the right way to do it, because you're splitting it up. You're using the target ROAS lever to target different levels and maximize revenue within each category. Best practice, beautiful scenario. 80% of the time I open up something, it is the same target ROAS, or it is 700 and one has 725 and the other one has 715, and it doesn't make a difference whatsoever.
Now, you within that, you were saying that you are still a fan of shopping campaigns versus a PMax for feeds only. So what are some of the benefits you see there, and why do you still like using those shopping campaigns?
So it's actually one of our double downs this year is to double down on standard shopping. So there's a couple of things. One is the knowledge that we're only buying shopping ads clicks. We're not, once we're decreasing the ROAS target or increasing the budget, we're not sending a signal to Google to say, try to go into display, try to go into video, try to go into search. We're only saying maximize shopping. Because what we do in Savvy is we usually take over accounts where the goal isn't to get us some revenue through Google Ads. Our goal is to maximize Google Ads as a channel. And by doing that, we need to find out where's the diminishing return on shopping, where is it on search, where do we then have to start going to YouTube. Display we never touch. It's a bad idea. But on the shopping ads, we know exactly what we're getting. So if we lower from 300% ROAS to 250, then we know exactly what we're getting more and more. We know what that incremental extra value is we're getting out of shopping ads. And that's just a component that's a lot harder to control with PMax. So the knowledge we're only getting shopping ads clicks is really the biggest part. That you can create different campaigns. You can create structures where you move products from one campaign to another, use bid portfolios, set different targets, have access to minimum and maximum bids and stuff like that. It just means we have different components we can use or levers to pull throughout the year, and we don't just sit and wait for certain things to happen. It's really it's one of our core beliefs is things that you can proactively do and help smart bidding with. You should do. That's the only way to really scale an account beyond just grabbing what smart bidding will give you out of the box.
Makes sense. Julie, what's your take on PMax and campaign structures?
Well, I don't do e-com, so shopping is not something that's in my wheelhouse whatsoever. Performance Max on the lead gen side can be a little bit of a tricky situation, right? Because for a lot of lead gen, that threshold that Andrew was talking about with conversions really comes into play, right? So I think lead gen accounts feel they don't get to a point where the machine learning and the smart bidding really hits that level of efficiency that it's able to do on like a high volume e-com account. And so we find ourselves trying to figure out like how to take advantage of the things that will work when you're below some of those thresholds where things really get humming, right? How do you figure out which one of those things might work for you, what you want to test, and which things are just going to kind of like, I feel like sometimes they just get stuck, like just like running laps, right? Like it never really takes off if you don't have that level of data flowing in. And there's some things that you can do that can kind of help that. You know, if you're in an account that has the lower conversions, you can use things like portfolio bidding strategies, which allows more of your data to be pooled. I think that's a bit of a theme we have going on here today too, right? How can you pool more of your data to be able to provide it to the platform so it can best utilize it, as opposed to having all these little pieces where it's kind of looking at everything because it does that, but you're not setting it up in a way that it makes it easy for the system to be able to sort of make some of those connections to be able to maybe get you some better performance. So I think that's a place where if you're not at that high threshold where things are just going to kick into high gear, how can you utilize the pieces? How can you put it together and try to almost simulate as close to that situation, you know, as you can get with the totality of the volume of what you're doing?
Makes sense. Do either of you still have things you want to talk about as far as stopping, or should we move on to what will you start doing?
Let's go to start. We've told people what not to do. Let's tell people what to do.
Okay, it's time to take a look at some of the things that people should be doing instead of stopping. So what are you going to start? Andrew, let's go back to you on this one first.
So one thing that I think is key is search. And this is really much from an e-commerce angle. Almost every single e-commerce advertiser out there is like 80-20 on shopping versus search. And in some industries that makes sense. It's fine. But in a lot of industries, that means that you're not utilizing search enough. And that means that you're either just relying on dynamic search ads, especially if you have a multi-brand store where you have a lot of products, thousands and thousands of products. I still see people just focusing on dynamic search ads as a main campaign for search. And the more and more we've worked on search last year, the more and more we just see spending some effort on search really, really works. Again, if we go back to the swimwear example, if you're running a dynamic search ads campaign and you're trying to compare year over year, where is my swimwear keyword? Yes, if you're going through some search terms or pull some reports, you can kind of see it. But if you want to push your swimwear keyword before peak season or during a peak season, or you want to control it with the weather is super nice now, so now we'll get a spike, so it's a bit higher, and all these things you can actually do. You can't touch it if it's within dynamic search ads. You can't change the headlines. Hopefully, generative AI will help with some of that. I still don't think it will be really, really good for a long time. But managing headlines, controlling and monitoring where is your search keywords in terms of the impression share year over year, and then being able to have some levers to push up and push down. It's not enough just to go dynamic search ads. There are ways to make search better, and one of our starts in a bit will also be around ads. Well, I've chosen that as a separate component because it's so important for a search campaign to actually work. So I would say start doing more search. Just don't get comfortable with shopping owning the whole thing, because search is you can get other consumers, you can get other customers than you can with shopping, as some of the data points we've seen.
Right, that makes sense. And so search obviously not a new thing, but if you've taken the lazy approach, which I think a lot of people listening by nature in PPC, we're all kind of control freaks, and we like the campaigns where we can manage the negative keywords, where we can see the data, where we can set the bids. So DSA, I think what you're saying is basically that should be your catch-all campaign that you maintain for the stuff that you didn't think about, the stuff that maybe is all of a sudden trending. But you still need to monitor it and then bring it back into your search campaigns where you can actually take ownership, send it to the right landing page, craft the messaging, and do all of these other things that you're saying. Hands-on management does drive better results. And none of us here strive to be average. We strive to be the best in class, right? So that's how you get there.
The one note I'd say on dynamic search ads is my threshold for when to move a keyword out of dynamic search ads and into an actual search campaign has gone much higher. Like where it used to be, if you get like 5 clicks in a month, I was like, oh yeah, let's move it. Now it's much closer to like 50 or 100. So like what dynamic search ads does incredibly well, it takes a very unique long tail keyword and matches it, for instance, to a product or a long tail service or service page. That's what you want out of dynamic search ads. You just don't want swimwear to be a keyword that's lying inside dynamic search ads. It gets shown to your generic homepage or category page title, or God forbid, a product long tail keyword where it's like swimwear for swimmers, black XXL. Like it's a bad match. It's a bad way to actually run search, and that's where we just see people just get too reliant on DSA these days.
Yeah. Julie, not a shopping example, but what is something you're going to start doing in 2025?
So one of the things, that I've been talking a lot about is making sure that you are well positioned competitively. I think, Fred, your book talks all about this, but with the more leveling of what happens before the click, right? Like within the systems, with the automation, with the machines making decisions on our behalf, right? I think it's even more important that we are very, very aware of what other options somebody might have when they're searching for what it is that we are trying to sell. And it's incredible to me. I've been doing this for 20 odd years. It's amazing to me still at this point that I work with clients who honestly do not have a true sense of what those other options are. How are the other options positioning themselves? Like, what are they putting forward? And it's easy for brands to get very tunnel visioned on, this is what we do, this is why we're awesome, this is why somebody should want to buy from us. And that's important. But it's equally important to make sure that what you're putting out there, the copy that you're putting in your ads, what's showing up on your landing pages, how does that stack up against what a searcher is going to see? Your ad hardly ever shows up as the only ad at the result of a search, right? There's almost always at least 1 to 2 more ads that are showing up right next to yours. And I think one of the things that smart advertisers are going to do this year is make sure that your ads are competitive and compelling and create a reason for somebody to, it's not that we haven't always needed to do this, but I feel like it's even more important now with less control over what's happening, before the click. So that's a piece that I think here in 2025 is really, really important for advertisers.
Yeah, so we have a partnership with Athena, which provides some of that competitive data set. How do you go about that with your clients, Julie? Is that a manual process? Do you have some tools that you like? Talk a bit more about that.
I'm old, so I like to do things manually. And part of the reason I like to do some of the manual things too is, for me, it's about trying to really even if I'm not the target demographic, right? I'm a middle-aged white lady. I might not be your target demographic for what you're selling, right? But I want to try to put myself into the shoes of the person who we are trying to target and what they're seeing. And I find for myself, tools are great. You can get big data sets faster, if you're working with tools. But to me, the one piece that I always make sure that I do is I want to see with my own eyeballs a search for, some of the different targeted keywords, because I want to have that experience myself, seeing what's there, right? And then seeing, clicking through and seeing what it goes to, because I don't think there's a substitute for that. that you can pull necessarily from a tool.
Yeah, and this goes beyond just the ads then, right? It's that experience on the search page. What's organic? What's the AI overview result? Is there a maps result? What's going on? And that gives you a lot more context.
Yes.
There is one example that I do want to talk about. So I put this into a lot of my recent presentations, but one thing that I really love GPT and generative AI for is that it's really good at putting itself in the shoes of different types of users. So I'll say, here's a business. Who are the types of people that might be looking to purchase that product or that service? And then you get that list. And then as the next prompt, you'll say, tell me what value propositions might really resonate with that kind of audience, or tell me what kind of keywords they might be searching for. And now you can start building custom audiences around that. You can use it to build better ads. So my one example was write an ad for a florist service delivering in Paris. And it said you need to use the word elegance because apparently people in Paris and France like elegant things. And I was like, yeah, that sounds reasonable. I don't know if that's true, but sure, I'll buy that. And then the next day I see an ad on my TV for Air France. It's got 4 words in the ad, like basically the brand and like redefining elegance or something like that. It's like, whoa, like the French airline is actually using that word that GPT told me is the word that I should be using. And that's where it's great. It's just, it enables you to see things that the data is there because so many people have written about these categories, these businesses. Me as a middle-aged white man, I can't see that. I can't put myself in the shoes of other people, but GPT can. And so that's where it's really, really helpful sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think you can also use it to compile a snapshot of the other companies that you're competing against, that like whether from auction insights or whether you're doing searches and you're actually seeing it. You can also ask it to summarize, like, what are they about, right? Like, what are they selling and why should people buy it? Like, that's an interesting exercise too, to see what a machine thinks, because it's not having a reaction like a person would have, right? It's having a reaction based on data that it has access to relative to that, that entity. So there's a lot of interesting stuff, I think, that's out there that people are starting to figure out a little bit more how to integrate and how to use in their ongoing, strategy management, those types of tasks.
Yeah. Andrew, what are your thoughts on things that we should start doing, or maybe some of this generative that we're talking about?
I'll skip the AI stuff just because we talk about AI so much within our space these days. So I feel like people are like, and I still feel like it's not quite there yet. It's like it can definitely do things. Some of our own stuff that we do, definitely use it to just try to get different perspectives and act like a brand consultant and help me with this and this. Show a screenshot. How could we write something different here? And la 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 la. It's really good for me. It's still very, very a one-to-one relationship. You're sitting in one chat and getting ideas. It's very hard to across a big account really maneuver it and implement it and do stuff. So I think a lot of it's still in the interesting realm where it's not 100% actionable, useful yet. With that being said, we use it a ton. I would say the one thing that I think everybody should start doing a lot more is understanding ad spend versus demand. And that both goes into how do you actually do channel efficiency across Meta and Google as two of the main channels. Like, one is demand, one is demand generation, one is demand capture. And we just found some interesting things last year where we could see that the clients, like Julie said, they're used to bidding and spending 60% of their budget on Meta. Well, once we got into certain peak seasons or up to Christmas or during Black Friday, where search actually surpassed the demand it was on Meta, it could be tough to actually convince clients to think that the budget ratio shouldn't be 60-40 forever. But there are times of the year where, especially for a DTC brand, where Google can actually spend much more efficiently than you can on Meta, which is not the case for most of the year. Meta is much more efficient at generating scale. So understanding when to spend what on what channel is something that's a very big question, but you can really narrow it down to the amount of searches that are on Google. The more searches that you see in Google Trends should dictate that your spend should go up on Google quite significantly, and you should potentially at the same time lower spend on Meta. And we simply saw direct relations. As Google got much better, then Meta actually usually went down. Both during peak seasons, again, swimwear during the summer, but then during up to Christmas, the better we ran into Christmas, the better Google ran, the worse Meta actually ran on majority of our accounts. So that was something I think everybody just needs to understand a little bit more, because like Julie said, these are some of the things that will make you simply just run ads better, where we all have access to the same smart bidding, we all have access to the same campaign types. Where we really make a difference is where we position our business. Great. What kind of ads do we create? Great. But then how do we utilize the budgets that we have available? Is something that is just going to be a bigger and bigger thing, because these days everybody with access to smart bidding is just as good at the bidding mechanisms as I am, because I have access to the same smart bidding. So we need to find other ways to get better than others and stay ahead.
And so that's interesting, because you're talking about bidding across different channels. Let's talk about channels a little bit more. Obviously, where we've seen Google and its search market share in the United States has consistently dipped below 90% for the first time in a very long time. Its hold on the ad market globally has dipped below 50%. So clearly, Google is not growing and growing. It's still the biggest one. But what are we looking at for the future? Where are you seeing maybe future investments that we should start in 2025?
I just think that, so I think that there's two types of businesses out there. You have the businesses that are heavy search, and you have the businesses that are heavy social. Those kind of like that's like the majority of this like small to mid big range business. Of course, again, the Expedias and the Ubers of the world, Coca-Colas, they're everywhere. So we discount those. We don't talk about them. But those like that are in that like small to mid to low high range, they're either very, very heavy on search, or they're very, very heavy on paid social. And they need to marry up 100%. You cannot, like the meta days where you were just like growing and scaling into the skies are gone. Google is hella expensive on CPCs these days, and the skill sets you have in Google do not translate over to Meta, and the Meta skill set do not translate over to Google. So everybody has a really hard thing to do, trying to do this, but you really should. You should really expand, because the channels are getting worse and worse and worse. And there is that huge opportunity, which if I can find people in Google, I tell them this every single time. You screwed up YouTube. YouTube is the best ad channel in the world. Yeah. YouTube is the best ad inventory in the world, and you're selling me channel clicks on I don't know what. Like, going through it is just horrible to go through. You're spending double the budget the entire week. The threshold to get into YouTube is so high. Like, we don't even touch anything below $10,000 a month. 10, 20, 30, that's where you have to start getting a real effect out of YouTube. And it shouldn't be that difficult.
And Andrew, let's go a little deeper, because before we started recording here, we were talking a bit about your newsletter. And I think something that you mentioned was you want to go a little bit heavier on the video sites. So talk about that. And that's not necessarily PPC, but it is still marketing. And I think it is relevant for all of us as business owners. How do we get the word out that we're there ready to help you? Blogs are obviously very old school. People have been doing this for a very long time. Same with newsletters, same with email. Video, not that new anymore, but it is newer, right? So how do you see that shift happening?
So I've been writing articles and blogs for as long as I can remember. I'm a good writer. It always came kind of natural to me. So I always went really well. But in the last year, and with ChatGPT coming up, it's getting harder and harder for me personally to defend spending a lot of time writing an article. A lot of the people who read the stuff that we write, they've been following me for years. But when we look at new subscribers, new people to get the awareness of who I am, what Savvy does, and in general, articles it simply don't seem to be the way to get around getting to new people. And with ChatGPT coming out, it's getting easier and easier and easier to write a decent/good article. So you just can't stand out. So how can you stand out? It's by having some personality. It's by showing up. It's about being seen. It's about being able to be consumed on different avenues. Where an article, you can sit on your phone or your laptop and you can write it. Sorry, you can read it. But if you are on a YouTube channel or a video, then like I walk the dog and I listen to why Manchester United is trying to buy a Danish left back this morning because I thought it was interesting, right? But I will never ever sit on my computer and sit for 20 minutes and look at that. Same thing if you're trying to just get a little, okay, let me just learn a little bit about this. What is Andrew's opinion on Performance Max these days? Then you can just go in and you can listen to a quick video. It doesn't have to watch it, it doesn't have to sit and see it. But the differentiation that I have, being able to say my voice, my opinions, and showcase things in a video instead of just visually doing something, writing something out, is just huge. And the big wow moment for us was when we changed all of our agency communication processes from being in writing to being bullet points plus Loom. So doing bullet points, and so anybody can just quickly just see what's going on, scan it. But then, okay, if I need to show something, this is what has happened in the account. This is the way it is moving. This is our interpretation of this data. A 5 to 8 minute Loom video with a screen share where they can see me smiling, usually. It's much, much better, much more collaborative. And I was just like, okay, we're just shooting articles out into the interweb and hoping that people will read it, when this is so much more in depth and people can get to know me much better versus the written thing. So that's our thinking, my thinking on video being even more important going forward.
Julie, I'd love to hear from you. And you've obviously made a large shift with PPC chat in recent history, it having really been on Twitter before it was X, and now it's shifted to, I believe, Slack. So to talk to us about what you're seeing in the social space, and again, it doesn't have to be PPC per se, but where are people these days, and how's that causing you to shift your strategies in 2025?
We just talked about this topic on today's chat. If anyone wants to look at the archive version.
Okay, we'll put the link is right there in the description.
So it's a really interesting time as far as how to develop and maintain community. And that could be whether you're developing a community like of customers, right? For advertisers, a business, or whether you are trying to develop community and communicate with folks. It feels more fragmented than ever. Certainly PPC chat existed almost exclusively on Twitter for 10, 11 years. It then, when I took it over, it was primarily Twitter based. And over the last few years, the environment has changed. People's desire and hunger to use Twitter has changed. And so I've diversified PPC chat into as many channels as it feels like people want to participate on. And it's tiring as the person who is running things on now. I used to run like 2 channels, like LinkedIn and Twitter. And now I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky. We have a Discord. We have a Slack. Like, it's a lot. And so I think one of the things that we're going to have to figure out sort of like individually and collectively is how do we want to interact with each other? How do we want to interact? How do people want to be interacted with in general? And I think that's something that depends a little bit on the demographics of who you are interacting with too, because there's a big generational split in love of video versus written. So if you're trying to like get with people who are, like 40-ish and under, video is highly preferred, especially the 35 and under crowd. If you're looking to reach people who are 45, 50 and older, video is not going to do for you what it's going to do in that same younger demographic. And so I think one of the things we also need to do is tune in and think about who are we trying to reach, and then create ways to reach the various effectively reach the various demographics who might be buying what it is that we're selling, right? And I think that's something that video can play a huge part in that. And I think if you're sleeping on video in 2025, you're probably going to regret that. But I think you need a strategy. Like you're not making video for 55-year-olds, really, generally, right? You're making videos for people who are, in their 30s and younger. And so that might be a little bit different messaging than what you're doing in different media. So it's a lot of experimentation, honestly, and finding that mix that works for what it is that you're doing. I wish I had a better answer.
I think that's a great answer. I think you're spot on with the different audience segments, but I think technology has really come to the rescue here, because I would also put myself in the camp of like, listen, I don't want to look at a 5-minute video and I can read 3 bullet points and get my answer right there. But as a creator, it's really difficult to take 3 bullet points and turn it into a video that satisfies those people who want to consume a video. Whereas the other way around, you now create a video, Gen AI is going to make you a beautiful transcript. It's going to do the bullet points. So it actually makes it consumable for everyone. So the way that I would think about it is like, what is the most difficult content that I can create one time that then becomes the foundation for everything else to be somewhat automatically created, right? And that's where I think a focus on video does make a lot more sense, because you're not really cutting off that older audience. You're just starting at a different point that leads into eventually you'll have those assets that the older audience prefers anyway.
You like that was exactly what happened with us. Like I tried the last 6 months of 2024 to go from art. Like, okay, the idea was to write an article and use that as quote unquote a script to create a video based off. Never found the time to go out and create that video based on it, where again, like you said, you can create a video and then get ChatGPT using my voice to write an article based on it. Easy peasy. I can't get ChatGPT to do a video on me. Not even the notebook LLM is quite there. It's very interesting, but I get like cringe on another level when I hear somebody, wow, was that the case with Google Quality Score? I didn't know that. I was like, sure, I know. So tweaking that, we might get somewhere from a podcast perspective. Very, very interesting. Not quite there yet. But yeah, I like the video first approach. And just on a note with age, the Missouri, what was it called? The Missouri Star Quilt Company, 9-figure annual revenue, mainly organic YouTube. They're just how to quilt.
I mean, it's possible. You just have to, I think you have to find what works. I think it's like flexibility has always been important in this industry, and not being so rigidly committed or married to this is how we're going to do this and this is how we're going to do it forever. Like, we all know that doesn't work, right? Like, you have to be flexible in your thinking. You have to be willing to be flexible in your approach and how you want to do things, and try stuff, right? Like, try it for your business first and see, like, if you haven't done a lot with video, give it a whirl, make some little videos. I mean, Jill Saskingales is like my content hero. She makes more content. I don't know how she does. I'm convinced she doesn't sleep. She's incredible.
She just does it.
She's incredible with the content. Like, just put it, but one of the big ways she does it is exactly what you guys are talking about. And that is starting from one, and then how do you slice and dice that into pieces that you can use in other ways. And I think thinking about that for both ourselves and our businesses and on behalf of our clients and brands, I feel like that's a formula that is going to be helpful no matter which pieces of it, you end up really implementing. Having that mind thought, that thought process, that mindset, I think will be helpful heading into the, 2025 year.
All right, let's talk about the things you're going to be doubling down on for 2025. And Julie, I'd love to start with you on this one.
So we've talked about video, and I think video is an area that personally I have not pushed really hard in. I work with lead generation clients. They tend to be a little more video averse maybe than e-com folks are. But I think really trying to get more buy-in and have more opportunities to have video assets to work with on various platforms, I think is really, really going to be important, especially as more written junk can be created by AI. It's, as Andrew said earlier, it's much harder to create AI video. So if you can, even if they're short, even if they're little snippets, baby steps, people, get some video going. I think
Julie,
it's probably something.
I agree, but to the point of it being harder to do video, let me introduce you to my AI double video avatar that talks in my voice, has my face. We'll put a link up to this in the description so people can take a look and tell me how
He's
good you
called
think
Little
my
Fred.
is.
He's called Little Fred. That's what we call him at conferences.
It's scary. It's scary. It's a little. I mean, that piece is a little scary. I try to think about that piece too much because you don't want people. Well, you could think about where that technology could go, but for brands, if we're talking about people that we're working with, the time of being able to just be like, no, we don't do video. I don't know that that's really going to, be sustainable. So I think it's something that if you're not already doing it, at a minimum, you need to be talking about it, putting the resources in place and planning for it to be able to start adding it into the mix of what you're doing.
Makes sense. Andrew, let's go to you.
So I have three things. The number one thing I'd say is smart bidding and understanding playtime with smart bidding. Way too many PPC managers today just put on a target, increase it, decrease it, and don't know what's happening. It's crazy to me, and I think it's crazy to many who did manual bidding to just let smart bidding run its course and see what happens. There are so many cool mechanisms to the way that smart bidding bids as you increase and decrease targets, whether or not it should be a 10% increase or a 20 or 30% increase/decrease. It does different things. And the way that it kind of expands as you lower your ROAS during certain time, increases your bids as you lower the target during different times of the year is just mind-blowing, the results you can get out of playing with it. So I just encourage everybody, smart bidding playtime. There's we do a lot of audits in Savvy. It's become a really big thing to do audits for in-house teams, and the amount of times we have the conversation that goes, so why do you still run this ROAS target? Well, we've always run it. Oh, stop. Or we don't want to rock the boat. Oh, stop. You have to rock the boat. So the way the smart bidding works is that it works by the historical performance, and it utilizes that historical performance over and over and over and over. But if things change in your business, so all of a sudden a brand or category has become bigger, but 3, 6, 9, 12 months ago, it learned that category didn't do well from a search term perspective, it's not going to magically pick that up again. You have to tell it by decreasing the ROAS or by grouping ROAS targets together through bid portfolio strategies, that it has to go out and chase some things. So I would just highly encourage playtime with smart bidding as a key skill that any PPC manager should be able to do today. Second thing, interesting. Second thing is blended ROAS. This marketing efficiency ratio, MER, anything where you look at your overall revenue versus your marketing spend. That's something that's become extremely popular these days. And I, for one, love it. It overrides a lot of issues with tracking accuracies and avoids mainly the attribution conversation. I would say just double down on that. Double click on it. Go one step beyond just going, we're a revenue of $1 million and we can allow ourselves to spend 15%. That conversation is too one-sided. It's too ad focused. You don't take SEO into perspective. You don't take oftentimes affiliate email direct traffic into perspective, which is one of the benefits of it, but it's also its biggest downside, that you're not thinking about those other channels anymore. The entire conversation, all 2024 in Savvy, was what we're spending on Meta, what we're spending on Google, what's our blended ROAS, and it's too simple. Net profit, contribution margin, new customers versus existing customers, lifetime value optimization. You don't have to do it all. Just pick one of those aspects to include into that blended ROAS conversation, and you will be able to see you can actually have more buttons to push than you thought you could. And third one, I would just say just ads. Just write better ads. Every single person listening to this, write better ads. If you go out and you do what Julie said, search for a keyword, see what everybody else is writing, and what the reason why shopping does better than search is that you can see the price in shopping and you can see the product. So if I'm looking for a winter jacket to go to Denmark so I don't freeze with my San Diego spring jacket during winter snowstorms in Denmark, which I do every year, then I go, okay, that rainbow colored $3,000 jacket, that's not for me. I'm not going to click that. That $400 technical jacket from this menswear brand, I like that in olive green. I'm clicking that, and I'm already qualified to click on one ad over the other. When you click on shopping, you can get the same effect in search. Get the pricing in there and get some qualifiers in there. Right? Why people shouldn't get people to stop clicking your ads, because that means you get the right people to click on your ad. So if you have an ad that just says menswear on sale, I don't know what I'm clicking on. That's why search doesn't work in e-commerce. It's because everybody does that. Write something specific. Is it street inspired menswear? Is it stretchy menswear? I'm Danish on my brain. But is it get some good examples in comfort menswear, or package offers, things that get the right person to click on your ad, and you'll just see search do much better. So just double down on search, write some better ads, ask ChatGPT, what could I write differently here? And it's not that difficult.
Well, and that goes back to the blending of social and search. Social seems to be so good at knowing exactly what kind of menswear you seem to prefer. Why can't that not exist in search, right? If you do that more generic query. And that's one of my premises that I've been talking about a lot, is that large language models are basically starting to serve as our memories. By the way, I'm wearing the B computer, this yellow thing on my wrist. It's recording everything that happens throughout my day. So this conversation later on, I'll get bullet points. But if I go to a store and I ask a question about whether the SodaStream refill canisters are in stock, it'll remember that too, and it'll know if they were or not, and it'll tell me, hey, Fred, go online and order that thing, right? So, but as these things become more and more of your memory, I can now go to a search engine and I can say refill, and it'll know that. What kind of refill am I talking about? Well, I went to the store and I was talking about a SodaStream refill. So a very generic query can actually lead to a very specific answer because it knows me, right? And that's, I think, how search will change because of large language models.
Wow.
I'm gonna get divorced. I'm if I can pull up a computer to let my wife know I was right.
I would not advise that.
No, it doesn't sound like a good idea, does it?
Not do that.
My wife does insist that I push the little button and then it becomes red and it stops listening. So,
no, but I love it. I love it. I can't wait for the day that I don't have to remember anything or explicitly tell the AI something. I can't wait. My wife we were talking about food yesterday. She was making a very good fried rice, and we were out of toasted sesame oil. Well, Google is listening to everything we're saying. It should simply just add it to the shopping list. We've bought it before. We've had it on the list before. It's listening all the fucking time anyways. Just add it to the list. Don't make me add it to the list. Don't make me tell it to add it to the list. And then I'm a little bit hoarse right now, so it can't recognize my voice anyways. Just add it to the list.
So this is a $50 device that you can buy today. It'll be shipped to you in about 3 days. It's B.computer. And it's fascinating because at the end of the day, I do get my reports, and I never realized how much something can know about you just by being present throughout the day. And so that example that you just gave, it's brilliant, but wait until you see what else it starts to know about you just by being on your wrist. And it's scary, but it's also exciting. And, I want to try it out and see where this can lead us. But I think 2025, very exciting. And Julie, I think you said it, that we don't know what it's going to bring, good or bad. It's definitely a time of change, but let's make a change for the better. Thank you both for sharing your perspectives on what to stop, start, and double down on. I think this has been a great episode. So Julie, people can find you at Neptune Moon, as well as PPC Chat.
Yes.
Anything else from you, Jules?
I'm on all the platforms. So you can find me, Neptune Moon, on all the socials. You can find me on LinkedIn, neptunemoon.com, officialppcchat.com. I mean, I'm not hard to find if you want to track me down and talk about any of this stuff.
And we'll put some of those links in the description as well.
Awesome.
My executive assistant, when I said, hey, I don't have Julie's email at the moment, like, can you reach her? She was like, wait, is this the person on LinkedIn? I was like, yeah, that's the person. You can't miss her. Andrew, Savvy Revenue, what should people do to get a hold of you?
So number one thing, just go follow me on LinkedIn. Like I write a bunch of stuff in there. At the moment, like I said to begin with, I'm liking going through LinkedIn on a daily, weekly basis, and then seeing all the stupid things people are saying these days, and just in very, very common, low, sensical words say, why is that wrong? And you'd be surprised, because it's ChatGPT. A lot of it is ChatGPT, and I'm just like, well, that's just wrong. It's just blatantly wrong what they're saying, and here's why. So if you're looking for a little bit of sense in your Google Ads day, just follow me on LinkedIn. It's where you get the most out of it.
Andrew, I'm going to hire you as my fact checker. Sounds like there's a big future in that. Okay,
there's a YouTube video series that comes up. Andrew debunks stuff, so it's coming.
Okay,
nice.
We'll put that in the notes as well. Hey, thank you both. Thanks everyone for watching. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe. Put in comments what you liked, what you want to see more of, and we'll see you for the next episode of PPC Town Hall. Take care.